Welcome, one and all, to the governance update with Stephen. Why are you laughing? Stephen Cooper, hello. What's wrong?
I'm never quite sure where this is going to go, Chris, what you're going to say.
You know what? In the back of my mind, when I was saying welcome, I was nearly going to do oye, oye, because there's a little story that I'm going to use on the podcast this weekend about town criers in England and the impact of COVID.
It could be somewhere where we could apply your dulcet tones, Chris, when you tire of podcasts.
So welcome to the governance update. How's your week been, Steve?
My week's been terrific, Chris. It started with a trip to Stawell to have a yarn with the Northern Grampians Shire councillors as part of the induction. And they're always a very welcoming group, along with their CEO, who you know.
Indeed.
And then the week just got better.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Now, we've got lots to talk about, but it's just going to have to be put on hold for a moment because I can hear the footsteps coming down the corridor and the door's just about to creak open, and Hannah Duncan-Jones from LGV is going to stick her head in, and I think here she comes now.
I can hear a noise.
And a delight to have Hannah Duncan-Jones with us in the room now. Hi, Hannah. Looks like you're in the office.
Certainly am. We're making that transition back, and it was a beautiful Friday to walk in across the gardens to the office today.
Excellent. Great to have you here. And we really do appreciate you popping along every now and then to update us on how the implementation of LGA 2020 is going. And I think all the talk the last week or so has been around procurement. Am I right?
Absolutely. We had a really, really great webinar last week on procurement, and some fantastic input from people across the sector talking about their approach through their regional procurement networks in relation to getting that procurement policy in place. So councils have got until the 31st of December to put their procurement policy in place, with the actual provision of the Act coming into place on the 1st of July this year. So you don't need to wait until the 31st of December. And we certainly heard from some councils that they're going to take their autonomy quickly and get their procurement policy in place, which is absolutely excellent, to be really working on that principles-based approach and embedding that through their procurement policy and undertaking procurement under their own guidance within the policy. So really excited about that. Lots of people in attendance, so obviously a big topic for the sector.
For those few people who missed the webinar, Hannah, what should they do if they want to catch up on it?
Absolutely. Go to Engage Vic and they'll find it there, and they'll also find some of the resources that have been shared from those regional procurement networks around their policies, where they're up to, the things that they're considering in those policies. So absolutely the resources are there, and really encourage everybody to have a really good look at those.
And given the time that we're at in terms of the calendar, obviously another big focus at the moment is budgets, and for some, I noticed council plans at the moment right now.
Absolutely. So whilst the Act provides that separation between the adoption of the budget and the council plan and community vision in the first year after an election, some councils are doing both together, and there is obviously a certain logic to have a council plan at the time of budget, but it's also playing out that people are taking the extra time because of the deliberate engagement process needs to run through to the council plan and through to the community vision, and really making sure that their community have had a great opportunity to participate and have an influence on those really key strategic documents. But certainly seeing lots of budgets out there on notification, lots of processes that have enabled people to input into budget processes across the state with their local councils. So really, really great to see that work underway. And this is really the kind of engine room of strategic planning for councils in year one underway right across the state at the moment, and it's really, really exciting to see that everybody is really sort of taking that and going with it in the spirit of the principles and doing everything that they need to do.
Hannah, you don't have a sense of how many councils have decided to bring the council plan forward to align with their budget? I know of one or two.
Yeah, look, I think that initially it was a bit of a concern, the separation, but I don't have any particular numbers on it, but I think that the concern of the separation between the council plan and the budget has really died down, and people are paying respect to that deliberate engagement process and really letting that take its place and influence from their communities be really effective through that.
You mentioned community engagement. Those policies, of course, are in place, but a really big part of that work that you've mentioned that is still coming, particularly around the visions.
Absolutely. So again, they need to be in place by the end of October at the same time as the council plan. And I'm really excited to see these come through, because I'm seeing really, really great conversations happening across the state in many different ways. And that is the point of a principles-based act, that the conversation needs to occur in line with deliberative engagement, but also as their community sees deliberative engagement occurring. So happening in all kinds of scales, forms and formats, and that's really, really exciting. So I'm looking forward to seeing those documents when they're published in the months ahead.
Hannah, sorry, Chris, are you getting a sense of any of the different models that councils are using to really ensure community ownership of those vision?
Yeah, look, there is everything from the kind of the citizen jury model, creative conversation models that are involving panels, those sorts of things, to a whole range of then diverse conversations, sort of small town by small town across the state as well. So, you know, it's really about what suits the particular makeup of the municipality, because, you know, in some of those municipalities, you're basically got maybe one big town and lots of small towns, and they have very distinct you know, communities, and those conversations need to be taken in that way rather than a holistic way that you may do more in a metro setting as well.
Hannah, I noticed the new Gender Equality Advisory Committee has met for the first time, and there's a lot of work going on around aligning the work of councils and what they need to do under the Act, the Local Government Act, with the new Gender Equality Act. How is that process going from your perspective?
Look, it's going really well. We continue to work really closely with the Commission, and the Commission are doing an awful lot to ensure that there is great supports out there for councils and all bodies who are required to take action underneath the Gender Equality Act, to do those gender impact assessments and to put together their audit, their gender equality audit. And it's really important to look at their website, because they've actually got free tailored workshops on gender impact assessments and workplace gender audits that are running through May. So I encourage everybody in council to get onto those and have a look at those. And really, really important to think about this in terms of, whilst councils have already adopted a number of key policies or rules, such as governance rules or expenses policies, that there is an opportunity to use a gender impact assessment at any time to look at those and to see, well, does the way that we're running our meetings, or does our expense policy really, really reflect that gender equality, and make sure that people can access whether it's, you know, expenses or whether it's attend meetings in a way that is appropriate from that perspective.
And Stephen, of course, the VLGA has been doing some sessions with councillors on the Gender Equality Act and what it means for them, hasn't it?
Well, it hasn't. It will, Chris, because by the time this episode's published, we will have conducted a session pitched at councillors. And the VLGA is partnering with GenVic also to run a series of workshops. The first few, and I think the one on the 6th of May is just about booked out, Chris. The first few are targeted at staff who are not in the people and culture or human resource area, and we'll be collaborating with GenVic beyond that to target particular identified areas of need. So trying to be a bit flexible and sort of pick up the niches, if you like.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve. I knew you'd like to give that a plug. Hannah, before we let you go, is there anything else on your radar you want to share with us?
Look, I think that the one thing that is that we're continuing to work with the Victorian Ombudsman's Office on the complaints policy. The Ombudsman's Office are working on their update to council complaints and a good practice guide. Just want to talk about the fact that we don't intend to create regulations around managing complaints, but there may be some future requirements around reporting through the review of the local government performance reporting regulations. But really what we're encouraging people to do is to look at the work that has been done by the Ombudsman and will be re-released, and guide their policy in that way, so that it's going to have some kinds of consistency across the state about what is good complaints management, what is a good process to have in place to ensure that you're effectively responding to complaints that you hear from the community. And probably just a bit of a thing that's coming up to the side at the moment is around regional library corporations. And just to remind that regional library corporations are established under the 89 Act, and they continue to operate under that Act, but they have 10 years to become a beneficiary enterprise under the Local Government Act 2020. So nothing happens to them. They continue to operate, and there is that 10-year transition.
You raised an interesting point that I've noticed in a few reports already that are quoting both the 89 Act and the new 2020 Act. Is there a magic date whereby all of the 89 provisions will cease to have any impact?
Well, there's obviously the 10-year window in relation to regional library corporations. There is also some provisions that will sit into the 89 Act that don't have a timing on them at this point in time because they require legislative work across government in relation to, say, roads and drains. And so we don't have a time frame on that. But the kind of majority of everything that affects councils end of this year.
Well, it's sort of appropriate that one of the most amended acts on the statute books is going to, in some way, be with us for quite some time, I reckon.
It's got a long tail.
Chris, on that point regarding the tail for the regional libraries, I know of one that recently adopted a meetings local law under the 1989 Act. So, and my recollection is the way it's worded, it says even if the Act's repealed, the libraries will behave as if it's not repealed. So that will keep going for a long time.
Oh, well, there you go. The wonders of local government. Thank you, Hannah. Always great to speak with you, and we really do appreciate you dropping by. I can tell you haven't been in the office for a while because the battery is dead in your clock on the wall behind you. You probably haven't even noticed that.
Oh, it's just on Friday time. Time to go home, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's set 4:45 since you first joined us. Thanks very much, Hannah. We'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you.
So, Steve, back to what's making news around council land in terms of governance. Gosh, there's a lot this week, isn't there?
Chris, before we start, though, and I know Hannah's gone, can I put in a plug for the regular implementation matters email? Yeah. Because I think anyone that's looking for a bit of information, there's a font of resource there.
It is
you just have to search implementation matters in your email and you find it.
It is a very, very good resource, absolutely. So a little bit of interstate news again this week. The cone of silence came off the proceedings that surrounded Sharon Kelsey, the CEO of Logan, in terms of the unfair dismissal case that she was unsuccessful in winning. And this has come out and added fuel to the fire this week in the discussion about whether those Logan City councillors should ever have been dismissed in the first place. Have you followed that, Steve?
Yeah, to the extent one can reasonably from this distance, Chris, and we did talk about it a few weeks ago, but yeah, so what happened this week is that the outcome of the Fair Work application by the former CEO became available, and it was found that the Commission decided that the councillors have no case to answer. I think it sounds as though that informed the actions of the Integrity Agency, where if the civil matter relating to the employment failed, it was so highly unlikely that the criminal matter in terms of the misuse of position was going to get up, and therefore those matters were dropped. And so given that the conduct of that criminal matter triggered the suspension of the council, that's caused the inquiry into those particular matters.
Yes,
is that an explanation?
That's pretty good. And so the story this week is about the suppression order being lifted on the unfair dismissal situation, where the former CEO, Sharon Kelsey, who used to be a CEO in Victoria, by the way, at Glenelg Shire, I think it was Glenelg Shire.
It was Glenelg Shire.
Where Sharon argued that there was a plot from councillors against her, and the QIRC, the Queensland Industrial Relations Commission, found that there was no evidence of that, and that case, from Sharon's perspective, was unsuccessful. So this has just given LGAQ another opportunity to double down on their demand that there be an independent inquiry into this whole saga.
Yeah, Chris, I stand corrected that it was the LGIQ, not the Fair Work Commission. The interesting thing that I found in that too was that part of the allegation by the CEO was that there was a WhatsApp group between councillors that no longer existed by the time the investigation started. And I just suppose it causes one to muse as to what reason there would possibly be to have a means of communication on council business that's not traceable in the way that council business should be traceable.
I had the same thought too. Clearly, a WhatsApp group generally is not going to be something that's managed within the normal structures that a council provides for council or communications.
No, and what would we do if there was an FOI application, and if we're communicating in a way, and this is just a comment generally, not about those councillors, but if we're communicating in a way that might avoid FOI, then maybe we shouldn't be communicating in that way.
Another bit of Logan news, they've reappointed their deputy mayor this week because that's a 12-month appointment. But in that announcement, right near the bottom, you've got to read the whole thing to find it. They've also revealed that in a confidential session of the council, they decided to censure, I think. I don't think that's the word they used, it's the word I'm using, one of their councillors for a breach of their social media policy. So it's still a bit of fractious activity happening.
I'm not sure if you've heard, Chris, apparently we have a list of things that we should come back to, and I'm not sure if our correspondence been monitoring it. Might be good to come back at some point to codes of conduct, social media policies, comments by councillors about the council, because I suspect there's rich pickings there.
Absolutely, and central to a lot of the discussion around the formulation of those codes of conduct a few months ago as well.
Yeah.
The other one that caught my eye, Steve, was a matter in Tumby Bay. Now, last week we talked about Tea Tree Gully, and as far as I can see, the mayor still has not stepped down at Tea Tree Gully, despite calls to do so. But in Tumby Bay, all of the councillors have been stood down due to a serious administration error, that error being that they had not lodged the interest returns that they're required to do under the Local Government Act.
And that presumably is a nuance of the Local Government Act in South Australia. My understanding is Tumby Bay is over the other side of the Spencer Gulf, down towards Port Lincoln. Chris, this is a recurring theme, because I've got an idea that somewhere in Canada, something similar has happened.
You wouldn't be talking about Saskatoon in Saskatchewan, would you?
Well, I heard a rumour, Chris, that you actually particularly enjoy saying Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, because I happen to be listening to the rather excellent Local Government News podcast. And you said
did I mention Saskatoon in Saskatchewan on the podcast, did I?
You did, and you've now mentioned it twice today. A councilman, who I believe his name is Darren Hill, failed to lodge his declaration of interest return, and under the law in, what was that place again?
Saskatoon in Saskatchewan.
Yes, apparently under the law there, a judge has to decide whether there is a sufficient good reason, such as ill health or a misunderstanding, that might justify the non-submission of that declaration. And if failure to do so means a councillor in, what's that place?
Saskatoon in Saskatchewan.
A councillor might be required to stand down from one's office by not making the appropriate declaration. So who knew?
Yes. So, and of course, now this situation in South Australia, where I think the story is that a new CEO has come in and has reviewed the records and found that she has been unable to find the ordinary returns that the council members were meant to have submitted from the period of June 30, 2019 onwards.
And a suggestion of a misunderstanding with the former CEO or some such thing. Chris, I think it kind of begs a broader question about why, what's the importance of a return of the register of interest? Why do we do that? Kind of why is it critical to trust by the community in the councillors? And interesting that those couple of examples elsewhere sort of point to the fact that it is important as a demonstration of trust. Can I actually make a comment that I haven't told you about? I did have a conversation with someone who I know in the Office of the Local Government Inspectorate this week. You might have also noticed I am a bit prone to hyperbole at times.
No.
And
no, I can't say that I've noticed that, but if you say so.
I'd mentioned to my contact in that office that I had said to a number of councillor groups that a failure to to submit properly your return of your register of interests, or your personal interest return, I think we call it now, will get the inspectorate very excited. And I was chastised to some extent and advised that no, we don't get excited, but we do get very interested.
Yes, well, there is.
I'm hanging my hat on the fact that the message is still the same, that I have it from the horse's mouth that the inspectorate is interested. And the new chief municipal inspector started this week, Chris.
Indeed, and I believe one of his first engagements is speaking at the Algua Vic Branch conference, which is happening as we record this, I believe. So good to see him hitting the ground running. Just want to close the loop back on that Tumby Bay story from a governance and a legislative point of view. Those councillors need to appeal to the South Australian version of VCAT, the CAT, to have their positions restored. But there are amendments to the Local Government Act in South Australia currently before Parliament. And if that goes through as presented, that section that causes the vacancy automatically when no ordinary return has been lodged will be removed.
Possibly more in line with what's the case in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Chris, where the judiciary get to make a decision as to the egregiousness of the offence.
I have a feeling you like saying Saskatoon, Saskatchewan just as much as me.
As much as you, Chris. But can I actually say something else that I like saying? Conflict of interest.
Yes, please.
Let's be serious about why is the register important. The register is important as almost a pipe opener to give the community a sense of the personal interests of councillors, to put councillors in a better position to be able to make appropriate declarations under the Local Government Act where they might have a conflict of interest in a decision that's before the council. I think, Chris, we're at a stage now where councils have gone through their code of conduct phase. There is, we're getting down to the business of council. And we've talked before about the fact that there's not the certainty in the 2020 Act as there was in the 1989 Act. You can't just tick the box. One of the real risks for councils is that they don't have, I guess, a consistency in their view as a group of how conflicts of interest are managed. Now, like my sense, and I could be proven wrong, is that material conflicts of interest ought to be reasonably evident. Probably one of the bigger risks is councillors casting the net a bit and make sure that where there's an affected person or affected family member that they consider a material conflict involving those people. The other one, though, is even if there's not a material conflict of interest, there may well be a general conflict where, a reasonable person test, a reasonable person might think that the decision-making of the councillor is influenced by the nature of the relationship. And I guess my message is to implore councils to, A, get good advice from a legal practitioner who specialises in local government law, and for the councillor group to discuss these things regularly, because, you can back it in, councils are going to be blindsided on the conflict of interest topic, and not only councillors, but also officers as well. Yes. So it's really important.
Good advice. Thanks for that, Steve. Now, before we wrap up, a little bit of CEO news that I meant to pass on last week, but we either forgot or ran out of time, probably the former. Robin Seymour has been appointed as the new CEO of Surf Coast Shire. People might be familiar with Robin, former CEO of Vic Roads, and currently I think the head of Road Safety Victoria. I think she wears a couple of hats in the state.
Congratulations to Robin. What a great spot to be CEO of.
Absolutely, absolutely. Natalie Walker, someone who's well known to you and I, really thrilled with this news, has been installed as the acting CEO at the City of Wyndham after the departure of Kelly Grigsby.
Well, I'm glad you made that disclosure, Chris, that we are both former colleagues of Natalie Walker, and what a terrific appointment in that acting role. The highly talented Natalie Walker will do a great job there.
Absolutely, she will. Particularly pleased with that bit of news. And on a sadder note, the CEO of the City of Adelaide, Mark Goldstone, has announced this week that he is stepping down. He's been on leave since the start of the year for health reasons. Obviously, it's gotten to the point where he can't see himself continuing in that role of CEO after 5.5 years, which is sad. And our best wishes go to him for his recovery, because, if you haven't got your health, as we all know,
it's pretty important.
Yep. Now, the mailbag's back. We got some mail, Steve.
How many letters did we get How much
We wouldn't get
mail,
any
Chris?
letters. We wouldn't get any letters, but we got a comment on LinkedIn.
Oh, we did too. I did think last week you were gilding the lily slightly, though, comparing us to, you know, Don Lane and Bert Newton off the sort of one piece of communication.
Forgot about
But
that
we
one.
did get a comment on LinkedIn.
We did from Lou, and it was the discussion we're having about the mayor's conduct at Tea Tree Gully in South Australia. And Lou makes the point that our Victorian councillor conduct framework is capable of dealing with that scenario. A councillor found by a councillor conduct panel to have engaged in serious misconduct, which includes sexual harassment, is ineligible to hold the office of mayor or deputy mayor for the remainder of the council's term. Remind me, is that provision new in LGA 2020?
I believe it is.
Yeah.
Well, I think the hoops aren't as what would I say, obstructive, if you like, Chris. There is a much clearer pathway to that point. And I'd also say that Lou's comment was accurate and nuanced. So she's quite right there.
Indeed. Thank you for engaging in the conversation, which you can do on LinkedIn when Steve or I remember to post that the episode is available. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Chris. Good to talk.
Always. See you next week.
Cheers.
That's the governance update. It's come to you as it does each and every week from VLGA Connect. Thank you for joining us. See you soon.